And welcome back into another new episode of Tribal Council Chat. We are your hosts, as always. My name is Bruce Heller,
Why not?
and let's dip our torches in the fire and get started. So, this week we have a fun episode for you. We're going to be talking about Survivor, heroes versus villains. If you're on the YouTube audience, you can see my t shirt. If you're listening audio, it's a t shirt with the heroes versus villains logo. But this is a little bit different of an episode because it won't be a season profile like we did with All Stars last week or like we've done with Cambodia before. We're specifically looking at one part of that, and that is Final Tribal Council. Brett, Heroes versus Villains is in its Final Tribal is one of the most highly debated topics in the fandom of who should have won, Sandra or Parvati. Who would you have voted for?
Yeah.
And so
definitely probably most hotly debated topics. And the interesting thing I think about this episode for us and this final tribal as a whole is there's really no bad option.
No.
There's a great case to be made for both ladies to get votes. And I mean, to an extent, I'm sure some of you watching may disagree with Bruce and I, but yeah, I'll admit there's a great case for Russell that he did play a good game too. So
yeah,
let's dive into it.
Yeah, and that is something I wanted to cover too. I'm glad you said that. I see a lot of people debating this, and a lot of people that aren't Sandra fans say, "Oh, this other person should have won, therefore Sandra didn't deserve it." More than one person can be deserving of a win. Both of the ladies, and there is a good case for Russell. We're not going to be going over that case today, just because of time. But Sandra versus Parvati is what you see debated all the time. They both deserved it. They both have great arguments for it. So let's start with. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, let's start. And with Sandra being the spoiler alert, eventual winner of the season, let's start first into the argument for Sandra Diaz-Twine's case in the final Tribal Council of Heroes versus Villains.
Yeah, so ultimately, I think the big thing in the argument for Sandra to win is a lot of people on the jury were from the Heroes tribe, and early on in the merge, Sandra did make that effort to try to work with them and try to warn them about Russell. And then they didn't listen, and they realized us being on the jury is our own fault. She at least tried to work with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think building on that, a great part of, in my opinion, the best part of Sandra's game is that while she tried to work with them, and yes, it was their own fault, at the same time, it's like Sandra put people there who she knew if she got to the end, she could have beat anybody.
Yeah. And
it's like, yes, to me, some.
Go ahead. So, yes, she did vote out the people on the jury. Sorry, I heard something behind me. She did vote out the people on the jury, but she did it with grace. It wasn't Russell burning bridges and Parvati not doing enough to separate herself from Russell. Sandra didn't burn bridges when she voted people out. It was game, and they knew that. So, good for her.
Absolutely. Building off of that, I know, like, one day I hope that we do an episode on voting confessionals into the future. Definitely. But it's like, in my mind, I think that it's definitely in my top 5 voting confessionals of all time is Sandra writing down Rupert's name, her number one ally from Pearl Islands, and saying, "I'm going to vote you out, and you're still going to vote for me to win $1 million." Yep. That is her game here, and it's brilliant.
Yep, that's exactly what happened. That was the same episode we got the "I'm against you" Russell line, which was also just hysterical. And another part of like the big argument for Sandra to win, not only I mentioned she tried to make an effort to the heroes, and you know this. I'm a Parvati fan. Honestly, I feel like Parv could have done a better attempt trying to work with the heroes. I know, or at least trying to have conversations. I know we had get a confessional from her at the merge where it's the heroes are ignoring her, they want nothing to do with her. But I don't know. I feel like if she had at least made an attempt, I guess, and maybe she did, and we just didn't see it. But that's an argument to be made in Sandra's case also.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely have more to say on that in Parvati's section, but no, you're totally right on that aspect. Um, what do you think, Bruce, was kind of your main, I guess, like skill in the game that would lead Sandra to end up winning?
I think, and she did it twice. Sandra's good at forming relationships with people that aren't named Russell or Johnny Fairplay. But
I mean, she's healed the Johnny Fairplay relationship in real life.
yeah, true. So Russell's next at some point in the next 2,000 years, maybe. Probably not. But Sandra's strength is her social game. It's
Absolutely.
she wasn't Russell basically. And again,
Yeah.
I'm a Parvati fan, but she didn't do enough to separate herself from Russell in the eyes of those around her. We as fans, we see confessionals and see her doing things that Russell didn't know about and wasn't privy to. But to the eyes of those around her on the island, they were like this. They did everything together. So if you hate one, if you hate Russell, you're not going to vote for Parvati to win. You're going to vote for Sandra. So
I think what you say there with like her social game is really interesting to point out, even looking further ahead to the few seasons that she didn't win. I know she played now 3 times after her 2 wins. And you would have expected somebody with 2 wins to walk into um, game changers and go home first. And
yeah.
she doesn't. Contrast that in game changers with, say, Tony's game that's so hyper aggressive that he finds himself out of there almost immediately.
Also
She
a great
goes in as
Sandra. Oh, sorry. Also a great funny Sandra moment is her reaction to Tony getting voted out and just going, "I told you so. Get out of here. That's what you get for coming after me." Mode.
that's a great tribal. And then fast forward that 6 seasons later, we're going now to Winners at War, where she's the only 2 time winner. And when Dakal loses in the opening episode, so like Tribal Council 2, the focus, yes, is of course on Amber, seeing that Rob is on the other tribe, that neither Rob nor Amber were never going to be able to avoid. But when you look at who's the other potential names that are popping up it's Kim for being too good of a player, not her.
Yeah, it was the dumb poker alliance thing. They had played a
And then
poker game on
let's
television together, and someone jokingly said, "If we're ever on the island together, power alliance." And they took it. Someone else took it seriously when they got out there and just ran with it.
yeah, exactly. And then let's fast forward again to another season. Sandra is the only US citizen on her tribe. She's playing with tribe mates who obviously look up to her
Yeah.
because she's the queen of Survivor,
For
but
the
are
for
also
audience
probably,
clarity,
I'm
this
sure,
is
threatened by her because she's a 2 time winner. She's now playing. Sorry, I'm having a bug flying around. She's now playing in an unfamiliar environment with a new host, with new fans, with players that she's never met before, on and with some, despite the fact that some of them are returning players in a country and a culture that she's, who knows if she ever visited Australia at the time, but there's a decent chance not. And she still lasts 16 days.
yeah. And for audience clarity, this last season we're talking about here was from a different show. That's Australian Survivor. So If you're thinking about U.S. Survivor seasons, trying to figure out where the extra season was, it's a different show. But your point still stands nonetheless. She does really well. And in Game Changers, she gets voted out because she got swap screwed. If if there wasn't 1,000 swaps on Game Changers, it just left her with no chance in the numbers. She had total control. She was, I mean, I don't know if I'd say control. She was totally safe on her first 2 tribes.
Yeah.
Then they do another swap. Game Changers is Game Changers, and she just didn't have a chance at the numbers. And Zeke plays hard and aggressive and wanted to go for a big fish.
Exactly. Like I was just saying, though, she gets to the merge in that game. I could have seen her working with Lucina. I could have seen her working with Aubrey. I could have seen her working with Suri.
Yeah, for sure. Man, Sandra and Suri were on 2 different seasons together, and were never on the same tribe or same beach. We got robbed, man. Can you imagine those 2 personalities together? I feel like they'd go after each other. I don't see them working together. They'd go after each other for sure, but that'd be great to watch.
Ben.
We got robbed of that.
Definitely something we got robbed of.
But yeah, Sandra's social game is incredible. Her ability to fly under the radar. I mean, even in Heroes versus Villains, she flies under the radar to the point where Russell keeps her around because he thinks she isn't making any moves or playing anything. And he says, I'm taking you to the end because I know I'm going to beat you. And that's how she wins. She flies under the radar. She makes a big show of, as long as it's not me, I'll vote anywhere. But she has a plan. She knows who she's voting for. She has a reason. And it works. It dupes everyone.
Russell clearly thinks he can go to the end and beat anybody, and that has a whole 0.00% success rate.
Yeah. And then he also came back to Australian Survivor, and that went poor. I haven't watched the season, but I've heard that went very poorly.
I haven't yet either, but it's definitely on my to-do list.
Yeah.
And it's not like it goes much better for him in Redemption Island either. Thinking that he's going to walk on the island and prove that he's better than Boston Rob, only for Boston Rob to play debatably the most dominant game ever.
The thing with Redemption Island is like Russell irritates me. I don't like Russell, but Zapatera as a tribe is one of the most annoying tribes to me also. So I'm like, and I just don't. I don't like when tribes throw challenges. Like this one, it worked out because he's Russell and you can't let him stay. But this just tribes throwing challenges almost never works the way you want it to. This is like the only time I can think of where it did. So it's kind of a lose-lose there for me.
Quick shout out before we move on to Parvati. Yes, we did mention Zapatero was one of the oddest tribes ever. Shout out in case any of her fans are listening. Notable exception to that, Stephanie Valencia. We were robbed of, I think, a really good game player going for.
Stephanie was great. If she hadn't made such a big show of aligning with Russell, I wonder how far she could have gone. Because once Russell was gone, she was the next target. She made such a big deal about aligning with him.
We talked about game change, second chance with Mateo a few weeks ago, and she was on my ballot as well.
Yeah, for sure. So
let's move on and talk about Parvati's game from here. I think I'll pick up off of where we were kind of speaking about her game in the middle of Sandra. This is a hard one because I think, just my take, but I think a lot of her game, like right after the merge, may have not been shown in order to kind of lead up to that magnificent idol play, the best we've ever seen.
Well,
and I'm not sure if I know that Parvati has said that some of these dates right around the merge in this game were for her the most difficult days that she's ever been on any Survivor Island, be that in 13, 16, 20, or 40.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's like, it's good to know, are people not talking to her because they're threatened by her? Is she going through a difficult personal experience herself? Is she not reaching out to the heroes and staying with the villains because she is kind of constrained in Russell and Danielle's alliance? I find it difficult to know, but either way, once we move on from there later in the episode, we get that double idol play that really solidifies, okay, she's here to play and she's here to win.
Yeah. And one thing I want to point out with her, and I have this jotted down, is an art like in the argument for her to win. Strategically, I feel like she was the one running the game. I know, like, her and Russell were together. The edit is very Russell heavy for both of his first two seasons, but we definitely see a few occasions where she's planning something or she's making a move that Russell didn't know about and Russell wasn't privy to. Meanwhile, she knew everything he was doing. So that kind of tells me she was the one running the game more so than him.
By all means, look at how Russell will say that he's confused with the idol play, and she'll say, "Oh, it's a secret."
Yeah. He
Look
could
at
never pull that off.
the scene where Parv and Danielle can sneak off from reward and get a clue, and both agree we're not telling Russell about this.
Oh yeah. Then they go off into the woods at camp and find it together, and he's still without him having a clue.
No idea. And yeah, so yeah, that definitely proves that she was really in control of the villains, despite we once again, just like Samoa, get this huge Russell heavy edit that may or may not be as accurate in reality as it is in television, and really only the people who were on the island, be them players, cameras, people, probes, will ever know.
Yeah. And I just like you've mentioned the double idol play, which I actually have listed not at one, but the second best idol play because Wentworth and Cambodia negated more votes. So, but I mean, you also have to look at going back to the pre-merge, which when you're at final tribal council, looking back to the pre-merge feels a little weird. But at the Tyson vote out, she did whatever she had to do that got Russell to trust her enough to play his idol on her. And not only that, but convinced Tyson to vote for her to throw Rob's plan off so Tyson would go home.
Absolutely. He was really pulling strings around that villain's camp from the beginning of the game all the way to day 39. And if a juror was open to voting for Parvati or for Russell, they probably voted for Parvati.
Yeah. Who were the three jury votes she got?
I can check that for you quick.
I believe it was Coach, Danielle, and I'm trying to think of the third one. For some reason, Jerry is in my head, but I don't think so.
I've got the voting records laid up on my phone here. It was Jerry, Danielle, and Coach. You were right.
I got it. Yes. Cool. I'm kind of proud of myself for that. I did that off the top of my head. I mean,
and looking at the other side,
right,
it was like Courtney was the only original villain who voted for Sandra, with the other votes coming from JT, Amanda, Candace, Rupert, and Colby. So I guess this kind of looking at that leads me to a topic I just thought of, is that maybe it was the villains who saw Parvati's more extremely dominant game over Russell before the merge.
Yeah.
Whereas Sandra's social game came in within her own tribe, but then maybe more took precedence post merge, where she was voting out people that she was aligned with.
I definitely think the villains probably saw that because, and gosh, I can't believe I'm about to use Randy Bailey as an example for one of my arguments because I'm not his biggest fan, but I believe it's Randy that says the phrase, that girl's like a virus. You let her stay around, she'll take control pretty quickly. And I mean, she was a target early on in the villains camp. And then
I mean, just in case the audience thinks that that we agree a lot, I'm gonna throw something out here. I really like Randy's. We got a difference of opinion.
is that something our audience says, is that we agree too much?
I don't know, but we tend to like a lot of the same players, as you know.
Yeah, that's fair. Have someone else on as a guest sometime that just disagrees with both of us on everything. That'd be fun. But no,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Mo-
Randy saw it from the beginning that I believe it's an episode title too. That girl is like a virus. But and the Tyson vote out episode, she was the target. They were supposed to split votes, I believe, but she ended up getting a majority of the votes because of Tyson being making not the best move in the world. But I mean, I definitely think you're right. Now that you say that, the villains camp saw her as the power figure. And once it got to the merge, the heroes didn't see it that way. They saw Russell being loud and obnoxious and just everywhere and everything, propping himself up. And they thought he was the one pulling the strings from that duo. And the heroes had the majority of the jury. So they don't like him. They're not going to vote for the person that they see as his henchman, even though that wasn't how it was.
Especially when you put yourself in their perspective. Because how can we talk about heroes versus villains and not bring up this moment? Um, I could see them thinking that Russell was leading that duo when they give Russell an idol and he doesn't play it on himself.
Yeah, and I'll get to the idol in this when we get to the section of this where we share who our jury votes would have gone to. I'll get to that idol in a second because oh my gosh, JT, what are you doing? But I have a reason that plays into my jury vote, so I'll get to that. But yeah, like they saw it. Well, did they see it as him running the show though? Because they sent him that idol, and
I
Rupert's
mean,
thing
after the
was,
merge,
"Oh, there's
like
this women's alliance."
they thought he was going home, and then next thing you know, she has the idol.
Yeah, well, she didn't. They didn't know she had it yet. They still thought he told them something. I don't think they knew she had it. He told them she
Not
put
till it
her
was
own or
played.
something. Yeah,
Yeah, not till it was played.
and they
And then once it was played and JT goes home, it's too late. Game over.
yeah, and the hero other than Amanda, and I know I'm biased on that one. And he made a boneheaded mistake, but admittedly, JT was trying. He was playing. The heroes, especially pre-merge, are just kind of not there as a tribe. And it's Amanda and JT and Tom a little bit, but not really. We're the only ones playing well. And JT makes a colossal mistake.
On the heroes, before we get into vote for, can I just say that when we're getting down to the end of the game and he almost pulls it off, Luke made an amazing strategic move by putting a rock in his pocket.
Putting rocks in his pocket is the most strategic thing that man did across 4 seasons of Survivor. Yeah, 4. If you count Blood versus Water, he went home almost immediately, but still.
It still counts.
Yeah. Well, he was never in the actual game, though.
No.
That's the only strategic thing he did in 4 seasons was put rocks in his pocket, and it almost worked. Oh my!
It worked for a week.
Oh, Rupert. So I'll let you go first on this one, and then I'll launch into my spiel. We've done the argument in favor of Sandra's win. We've done the argument in favor of a Parvati win. You're on the jury. Where are you going with this, and why?
So to preface this, I'm sure, as you all know, I have, at least those of you who listen regularly, I probably have a little bit of a bias in this, in that I understand one game better than the other, because I did take Winby on the game, where Parvati was my life coach through a Zoom course for a while, so about Survivor. So I understand her game probably a lot better. If I had the same opportunity to sit down with Sandra for 10 weeks, who knows? Maybe there would be a different case to be made here, but I'm going to be going with Parvati in this case. I think her ability to hide the fact that she was working with Russell, play that double idol, still be able to pick up herself after Danielle gets blindsided, her number one ally, get to the end of the game and take the arrogant player that nobody wants to win next to her, being Russell, her ally from day one, would have got my vote. However, I just want to preface this because I know I'm sure, like I said, it's a very complex issue and the community is really divided on it. As you all know, I'm a big fan of two players from Winners at War, Michelle Fitzgerald and Rob Mariano. So I just want to end off my decision in this podcast with one very famous quote from Survivor Winners at War: "If you win, you win. The end."
Oh, that's a great reference. That's a great scene. I love Rob. As for my
Oh yeah.
jury vote, I also, and I love both players a lot. They're both in my top 10 favorite. They might both be in my top 5 or 6 favorite winners, actually. Big fan of both. I would have voted for Parvati, though, and it's for a slightly different reason than you. I just think her road to the end was harder. She came in on day one with this giant target on her back, not only within her own tribe from the villains, but I mean, the other tribe wanted her out so badly. They sent an idol to someone they never met, never seen play. The only thing they knew about him is that he was labeled as a villain, which should have been enough to scare them away from this. Her target on her was so big, they sent that guy an idol to try to get rid of her. And I mean, it goes down a little bit when the heroes get merge majority, but that target on her doesn't necessarily ever go away. And I mean, yes, it's true. There's part of me feels like she could have done more to try to minimize that target. But she survived that target nonetheless and got herself to the end with that target on her constantly from people. And I love Sandra. She plays this game brilliantly, but Sandra flies under the radar the whole time. People don't realize she's there. To me, that's not quite as hard of a road to the end.
Very well said. I'm just gonna throw in one thing before we go into a final segment. Because you mentioned the heroes got merge majority for a day, and yes, by the numbers they did. But I'm sure if there's any big Yule fans or big Aussie fans watching us, was Candice really ever a hero?
See, and you
Or
and
did
me
they just want to
technically
split
are
up
pretty.
the two? I'm
So,
saying after the Cook Islands mutiny, did they just want to split up Candice and Parvati? I don't
well,
necessarily know if she belonged on that track.
and also they they made a point to split up the Micronesia people also.
Yeah.
So overall, the heroes and villains were casted pretty equally, pretty honestly. But like
What
Amanda
I've
and
heard
Sari
too,
being heroes and Parvati being a villain when they all made the same moves together makes no sense to me at all. So, and Natalie Bolton was an
heard
alternate
with
on the
that
villains.
is that, yeah, what I've heard with that is that Corinne couldn't come at the last minute.
Oh my gosh. I, her and Russell on a tribe would have been a lot for me to have to handle. Would have been great
Be playing
television,
together
but
again.
yeah, I would watch. I wish they would have had fair play, honestly, because I'm guessing Sandra and fair play weren't friends by heroes versus villains the way they are now. Just to watch Sandra on a tribe with have the fair play rivalry, and then also have Russell there, which is one of the biggest rivalries in the history of the show. That would have been entertaining. Just to watch those two go after each other and to watch Sandra deal with both of them.
Since we got a lot of engagement on social media last week in regards to All Stars, I'm going to bring up that question again this week. Which hero and villain do you think the season could have missed out on? But either way, let's go into our Ally Blindside first boot game, and feel free to go.
Actually, you go first this time.
All right, sure. So I am going to do a ally blindside first boot game with the three allies of the final three.
Okay.
So your options are as follows: Rupert Bonham,
Oh gosh.
Natalie Bolton, and Stephanie Valencia.
See, my first instinct is to blindside. First boot Rupert, but he's gonna help my tribe in pre-merge challenges a lot. So I'll blindside him at the merge, probably, maybe early merge. Because, he gets to the end, he's likable and builds relationships. I don't love the idea of sitting next to that guy in front of a jury. And I'm a huge Natalie Bolton fan. I think she'd be fun to work with. I wish we would have saw more of her in the Micronesia edit. We saw a lot of her towards the end, but early on, we didn't really see a lot of her. I'll align with her. I think we'd work well together. I've got to message with her on Instagram a little bit, not much. She seems super nice though. So that'll leave me first booting Stephanie, but I do really like Stephanie. So
I think I'm right there with you.
and so sorry, I'm thinking on the spot. Your options for align blindside first boot. I will go with I was gonna go with allies of the final three within this season, but Russell really only had the one ally. So I'll still try. Okay. I have this figured out. So you have Courtney, who is Sandra's number one. You have Danielle DiLorenzo, who became Parv's number one after a little while. And I'll throw the third one in there as Jerry, because she was in their alliance on the villains tribe. So I guess she was aligned with Russell at some point.
Yeah, great picks. I am going to go with my ally as Danielle, one of my favorite players from this era of the season, someone who's got to the end but hasn't won. And also, you know that I like picking players who are Red Sox fans. I am going to blindside Jerry. I think she has a lot of experience in the game, playing on so many seasons and getting very far multiple times
she's on.
to kind of help lead an alliance forward. But I don't know. This season specifically, she might have had some detractors before, especially at that All Stars reunion. But I really think the audience wanted to see Jerry win this season.
Yeah, playing next to Russell will do that for you.
Yeah, redeemed herself and became a very popular player. And that kind of just leaves Courtney as the odd one out. Nothing against her. But I think that she's going to end up as first boot just based on the other two.
Yeah, that makes sense. This was a fun episode.
Yeah, this was. We'll have to do this again with another interesting pairing for some final travel sometime.
I know exactly
but thanks
the
so
one you're
much for
thinking
listening, everyone. It was a great episode. Grab your torches and head back to camp.
Bye, guys. Have a great week.